Now, regular listeners to my show in the evening, you would hear Jonathan Davis talking about all things economic, and bless his heart, he's not shy in coming forward, are you, Jonathan?
Well, that's in the eye of the beholder, I would imagine.
How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thanks very much. It's actually sunny in Britain, can you believe it?
No, I can't. It's
most unusual.
Absolutely. Now, I decided I wanted to give you a tinkle because let's talk about this situation in Italy. How could they have started a complete new council that's going to work with the government to try and sort out the debt problem, but with no elected politicians? What's that all about?
Well, it's remarkable, isn't it? Mario Monti, the new Prime Minister there, he's not elected, and he's installed a government, or should I say a cabinet, where not a single one of them is an elected politician. Whatever happened to democracy? Perhaps I missed something. I thought we were living in a democracy in the West. But that's what they're saying is going to help Italy get through its problems. To me, it's just elastoplast on major organ failure. I've said before, and I'll say it again, there isn't enough money on the planet to solve Italy's financial problems.
I was speaking to Dave Hodgson about this earlier this morning, and we were saying, okay, so they're not elected politicians, but they do all come from a financial background. But it's not really enough, is it? They know about financials. Obviously, that's vitally important if they're going to be talking about the debt crisis. But they don't know how countries run. They don't know about the electorate. They don't know about things like that. Surely it comes hand in hand.
Well, you'd think so. I mean, ultimately, you're making a very good point there. I don't think it makes a blind bit of difference, because the politicians mess things up and the bankers mess things up. So whether you're a career politician or whether you're a career financier, it doesn't make any difference, because they all have mess things up by borrowing way beyond the realistic economics of that country, and it's the same for Greece and Ireland, and indeed the UK. Ours will come, and other countries in Europe. It doesn't make the blind bit of difference. As far as I'm concerned, it's a smokescreen. He's saying he's got these technocrats in, and apparently they're going to sort everything out. Well, it's really not as simple as that. In fact, in my view, it's literally impossible. Italy is bankrupt. It's going to bring down the European economy, which is going to bring down the global economy. I've
got to ask, the phrase technocrats, that's being bandied about like the favourite flavour of crisps over the last couple of days. It's more jargon, isn't it?
Well, exactly. As opposed to bureaucrat, which of course is basically a politician stroke civil servant, a technocrat apparently is someone who's a technical expert in finance. Well, wasn't it the global financiers who made all those reckless loans to Italy, so that Italy is now the third largest debtor country in the world, and it hasn't got the wherewithal to pay them back? So they weren't exactly particularly expert financiers, were they?
No, not really. I don't know. I'm hoping he's made the right decision, but the general consensus is no. For his first thing to actually do while the paint dries on his new office, people are generally saying this was not a good move.
Well, indeed. No doubt time will tell, but I really can't see how just by putting on a different lick of paint is actually going to help the walls stay up, for want of a better metaphor.
Let's move on to the UK, and Mervyn King, who's the head of the Bank of England, has been rather vocal about the mess everybody's in, hasn't he?
Well, dare I say, it's about time. It's the Bank of England economic report yesterday. It's on the front pages of practically every national newspaper in the UK today. Essentially, Mervyn King says we're toast. The UK economy is toast. Economic growth, well, you can forget that. Inflation, yes, they say it's going to come down, but unemployment's going to go up. Wages are not going to go up, so the economy is toast. Now, it's a funny thing, but people like me have been saying that for the past couple of years.
Yes.
So, it's not news. What it is pathetic that they play this game for as long as they can get away with it, that they're going to try and sort the problem out. There's nothing they can do.
Why do you think it's taken so long for them to say something? I mean, the Bank of England is supposed to be very vocal about things like this. They're supposed to be keeping an eye on things. Why haven't they said anything before?
Because they're playing a game. They're meant to be independent of the government. Nothing could be further from the truth. Mervyn King got himself a knighthood by essentially saying what the government wanted him to say. They're going through this mass economic experiment of printing money with abandon in the expectation, so they say, that they can sort the problem. Well, I'll tell you, it's a funny thing, but you can't get out of debt by creating more debt. You simply can't.
No, you can't.
So and that's what all the central banks are doing. European Central Bank, Federal Reserve in America, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, you name it, Bank of China. They're all doing it, and all it's doing is giving the politicians and the central bankers and the merchant bankers more time for them to not see the whole thing crash on their watch. And unfortunately what it does, when you print money, it reduces the value of your currency, so it increases the costs of your imports, which means that the man and woman in the street is hurt. And we're talking about 90+% of the population. We've got higher fuel costs, as everyone knows, higher heating light, higher transportation, higher food. But are wages rising at the same rate?
No,
they're not.
No, they're not.
Falling house prices, rising unemployment. If only they would stop playing games, stop printing money, we can actually reboot the system and we can really get some economic growth. But you know what it comes down to is something I've been saying for the last 2 years. You cannot have growth in an economy of our size with about £7 trillion of debt. That's the households and the government.
Absolutely.
£7,000 billion of debt, and yet the politicians and the bankers still pretend they're going to try and get growth. It's impossible.
We've got a call. Hold on, Jonathan. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hello, good morning. Good morning to both of you.
Hi.
Hi, Sharon. The other evening, Jonathan, you said not to put your money into property. Now, we rent out a property in the UK. What should we sell it or keep it as it is? Because we like to have the rent coming in sterling.
Jonathan?
Yeah. Well, of course, the rental income will be handy, and notionally, rents are about 4 or 5% of the capital value of the property. And of course, that's a higher, effectively, interest rate than you get in the Bank of Build Society. But what you need to take into account is, if I am right, if people like me are right, then house prices are going to fall, which means that although you're getting 4 or 5% income, what if you lose 5 or 10% per annum capital value? It just doesn't make sense. There are alternative ways of making income. You don't have to get it from property.
Sharon?
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your call, Sharon.
Okay.
Something I also wanted to mention to you about Northern Rock being sold to Virgin Money for £747 million.
This is very, very interesting. This is the government, of course, nationalised Northern Rock when it went kaput in late 2007. Many of the listeners may recall the queues round the corner of Northern Rock branches trying to get their money out when they heard from Robert Peston of the BBC that Northern Rock was in financial difficulty, to put it mildly. So I think it's a very good thing, actually, that the government should be privatising the bank. I think it's a very good thing that they're getting rid of the bank at a reasonable price. I think it's less than they actually shelled out for it, but they're getting rid of it, and then someone else can take it on. In this case, Richard Branson's crowd. And inevitably, I think what it will do is give Richard Branson the platform to create more competition in banking, in retail banking, in the UK. If you think about it, the 4 biggest banks control over 90% of UK banking. Now, that is technically called an oligopoly, which is pretty close to a monopoly.
Yeah.
In other words, great for the bankers, but not very good for the customers.
Yeah.
So the more competition we can have, because Richard Branson's talking about expanding the branch network, the more competition we can have, the better it will be, because the big players will likely either reduce their charges or just get their act together and provide a better service. That can't be a bad thing.
Richard Branson, I think, would be up against the fact that what happened with Northern Rock was so catastrophic. Are people going to be a little bit nervous, even though he's taken it over, and we know that he can do what he does, but are people still going to feel a little bit nervous because, mud sticks?
Well, perhaps it does, but I've little doubt, although I haven't read the detail, I've little doubt that Branson's buying it without Northern Rock's liabilities. So he's effectively, they've wiped the slate clean, and he's starting from scratch. And remember that so long as the government finances stay, as bad as they are now, but don't get particularly worse, then they will indeed continue to guarantee deposits up to £170,000 per couple per financial institution. So if you've got more than that in cash, then spread it between amongst institutions. But no, I think this is a good thing to have more competition in retail banking.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good thing.
Do you have time to take another call before you go, or have you got a dash?
Sure, I can take one more call.
Okay. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello, could you just please explain what you mean by rebooting the system, please? You mentioned it, but you didn't explain yourself. Thank you.
Rebooting the system with regards to the economy?
Exactly.
Okay. Jonathan?
Sure. If I were in charge, for want of a better phrase, I would stop bailing out the banks. I would split retail banks from investment banks in the City of London. Because that's one of the reasons why we keep bailing out these banks, because the banks say, well, we own the high street banks. If you let us go down, then the high street banks' customers are going to be severely affected. So I would split the high street from the investment banks. I would cut public sector spending aggressively. They're hardly cutting at all. I see that, in fact, Treasury forecasts are that they're actually going to be spending £100 billion more by the end of this Parliament than they said. And I would also move taxes away from wealth creation to property, because property doesn't create any wealth. So why am I saying that? Because if you did that, if you did even 3 out of those things, what would happen is that we would stop printing money. We would stop giving it to the financial elites. We would find that our currency would soar, which would mean that our import costs would plummet.
Yeah.
And no doubt that would mean a year or two of recession, possibly even hard recession. However, if prices fall, then I tell you, people will have more money to be able to spend, and businesses, small businesses, UK businesses, will have the opportunity to invest. And that's what I mean by rebooting the system.
Sounds like a good plan to me. Jonathan, thank you very, very much for coming on at such short notice. I really do appreciate it.
My great pleasure. Have a nice day.
I will let you get back to work. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.